And now, from a solar-powered shed he built himself with the help of a kit and several other men, a man who says the only thing he hates more than Vladimir Putin is single-use plastic. It's Pete Dominic! Yeah, that's what you get when you got no Pico. He is out of it tonight. I guess he had something like, I had to spend time with my son. I'm not going to be able to get the intro done. Maybe if you get up early and do the show early in the morning, I could have an intro to you, but apparently I have to hang out with my son. Some kind of bullshit is this, Pico? If I've taught you anything, the only thing more important than family is money and fame and recognition. But no. You've got your own set of priorities, sir. Well, whatever. Maybe we'll let you back in tomorrow. I've got an excellent show for you today, folks. I've got the Lieutenant Governor running for Lieutenant Governor with Charlie Crist on the ticket in Florida. Charlie Crist, my old friend Karla Hernandez Matz joins me for the first time here on the podcast. And also joining me, everybody's favorite commentator and analyst here on Stand Up, it's Bill Boyle. Bill B in D.C. joins me. Lots to talk about with him.
But I can't do any of it without your support, so go sign up right now for a paid subscription and be a part of our community. We hang out every Thursday night at 8 Eastern on the Discord platform anytime, and we would love to have you joining us and supporting the show. You want to find ways to help promote it, build it, grow it, join the street team within the subscriber community of Stand Up. We would love to have you. StandUpWithPete.com right now. What are you waiting for? All right, it's day 644 of the Biden presidency, and there are 12 more days till, in effect, it could change, could come to a real halt if Republicans take over the House and speakership. You're going to have a complete stoppage in any kind of important legislation and a whole bunch of phony investigations into people that don't exist about things that didn't happen, and worse, of course, Biden will be impeached. It's going to be real ugly, so I hope you're doing all you can to get out and support your local district, your congressperson for election or re-election in your state. Everybody up and down the ticket. But yesterday, in a sentence from WTF Just Happened Today, I always love this daily newsletter, President Biden warned Russia against using nuclear or radioactive weapons in Ukraine. Progressive House Democrats retracted a letter written 4 months ago but released Monday that urged Biden to directly negotiate with Putin to end the war in Ukraine. An estimated 4.6 million people in the U.S. are found to be ineligible to vote during this year's midterm elections due to prior felony convictions, which is horrible. And roughly 5% of all plastic products are recycled in America, with the vast majority ending up in landfills. Did you hear that? Who sent me that headline yesterday? Only 5% of all plastic products are recycled in America. Oh, Mark in Vermont. Yeah, thanks, man. That was a real mood changer when I read that. The vast majority end up in landfills, and more than 80% of the continental U.S. is experiencing unusually dry conditions or drought. And one more number, 62% of Americans say the federal government isn't doing enough to fight climate change. But, oh, my goodness, let's just go to that issue about the plastic. According to a report from Greenpeace, only 5% of all plastic products are recycled in America, with the vast majority ending up in landfills. The report estimates that U.S. reprocessed about 2.4 million tons of plastic waste in 2021 out of 51 million tons produced, and that no plastic packaging in America meets the threshold to be called recyclable. What? These are according to standards set by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation New Plastic Economy Initiative. Plastic must have a recycling rate of 30% to reach that standard. The rate of plastic recycling in the U.S. is also expected to drop further as the, quote, industry plans to triple plastic production by 2050. We must end the plastic. The only thing we can do is do our best to stop using it. This report concludes that plastic recycling is a failed concept, according to Greenpeace. You know, I'm going to be digging a lot more into that. But I like this this is narrated by Sir David Attenborough from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Solving Plastic Pollution. Here's a minute from the great David Attenborough.
By 2050, there could be more plastic than fish in the oceans. Yet the problems start long before plastic reaches our oceans, rivers and beaches, and so must the solutions. We must tackle this flood at the source. We must eliminate the plastic we don't need. We must innovate, so all the plastic we do need is designed to be safely reused, recycled, or composted. And we must circulate everything we use, making sure the plastic we produce stays in the economy and never becomes waste or pollution.
Join our journey to make plastic waste and pollution a thing of the past.
All right, there's your PSA. It's a fun video, I should have mentioned, with fish shitting at plastic and other things. EllenMacArthurFoundation.org. All right, I've got Bill Boyle right now joining me, so let's get to my first guest. Coming up, Karla Hernandez Mats after that. But before all of that, I want to make sure that you know that if you've got a business and you want rapid growth and you don't want it to come with growing pains, you have ambitious hiring goals, then you need a partner to help get you there. And you need Indeed, folks. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Find top talent fast using Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when all you need is Indeed. You can do it all with Indeed. If you hate waiting, Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed makes it easy to connect with your applicants. No need to install anything extra at all. Indeed's virtual interview tool works right from your browser. Indeed saves you headaches. Indeed virtually with no downloads, plugins, or purchases. You do it all in one place with Indeed. And after using Indeed's virtual interviews, most employers have saved them days of hiring time. How about that? Whole days. According to Indeed Data US, on average, applicants who scored proficient or higher on their reliability assessment were twice is likely to be on time for work, according to Indeed US. So join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for the quality applications from resumes in our database matching your job description. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applicants from resumes in our database matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/standup to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, now that that's done, I'm very excited to bring on my first guest, the always brilliant parking garage owner. Everybody thinks he's a secret agent, but he is not. He's just a smart, well-read, well-connected guy out of D.C. You can follow him on Twitter at Bill B in D.C. You can meet him at our Thursday night hangouts usually, and I'm very happy to have him here. I caught up with him all things, as I try to almost every week, on the war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion. We talked a little politics, a little current events, and to more. I think you're going to love it, so let's do it. Bill Boyle, come on in.
It's great to be here, Pete. How are you tonight?
I'm very happy to have you joining me. We loved having you at our hangout, and anytime you're able to join us, but it was especially fun last week to have your insights on things. There's some arguments with our friend Kevin, but it was great. I loved it. I got to get you guys on together, and he can flip out on you, and you can sit there and try to calmly take it.
That sounds good to me. Definitely. I appreciate getting flipped out on. It means people care.
Yes, yes, I agree with that. All right, well, there's a whole bunch of things, obviously, that I wanted to talk with you about. But first of all, the president, I just mentioned here in the opening, the headlines about a potential dirty bomb. There's a lot of questions about the threat that Russia could somehow detonate a dirty bomb. I don't have the headlines here. Why don't you just start talking about it, and I'll get the headlines. I wasn't ready, Bill.
That's okay. So it's really an interesting setup that's happening right now, which is that the Russians are doing what the Russians love to do, which is to set up what they call a provocation, where they create a narrative that describes a terrible thing that their enemy is going to do that they intend to do themselves. And when they do it, they want to blame it on their opponent as a false flag operation. So that the Russians are doing is saying the Ukrainians are going to drop a dirty bomb on themselves in Kiev, and they're going to create a dirty bomb that looks exactly like one of our tactical nuclear warheads, which I should get into a couple of technical details on this. The radiation, the radiological makeup of a dirty bomb won't look like a Russian tactical nuclear warhead. Uranium has a very particular signature. The way a particular bomb goes off has a very particular signature. If I go and get a bunch of radiological material from a bunch of different MRIs and make a bomb out of it, it doesn't have the same signature, A. B, a dirty bomb is nothing like a nuclear weapon. A dirty bomb is an explosive that is surrounded by already radioactive material, and it kicks it out to the distance of basically a city block or a little more than that. A nuclear weapon, if it's an air burst or a just above ground burst, will kick out radiation much farther. It'll be a different kind of radiation, different spectrum of radiation, different effect, different area of effect, everything. So when you listen to all of this, if you're me and you're a nerd about this stuff, you look at it and you're like, this is complete bullshit. Like it's not even an attempt to be really smart about it. I think the dirty bomb provocation that the Russians are working on right now is mostly about desperation. I think their armies are hurting enormously. I think that Kherson, the west side of the Dnieper River, they're barely holding on. I think that they are really in a lot of trouble, and I think their trouble is going to get worse, and they feel that way. And so I think that they are really throwing anything at the wall at this point to see if it sticks. Another aspect of that I think is interesting is it's giving them lots of reasons to talk to the U.S. They've spoken to the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the first time in months. They talked to the Secretary of Defense multiple times in the last week. This could be a way for them to have a pretext that their militants can live with, where they have conversations with the U.S. and what messages can be exchanged.
Right. Interesting development.
Yeah. And I don't really know. They may be crazy and dumb enough to drop a dirty bomb or to drop a tactical nuclear warhead. In any case, it's not going to matter much. I think you and I talked about this last time, where to really have an operational effect, you have to drop like 30 tactical nuclear warheads. You might as well drop an ICBM, right? You're still going to get all the opprobrium. No one's going to buy the bullshit that it's a false flag by the Ukrainians.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
Because of what you said earlier in terms of the signature?
Yeah, it's going to be clear that it was them.
Got a return address on it?
Yeah, it's based. I mean, there's literally, like when Chernobyl melted down, scientists in Sweden figured out almost the minute they started seeing the radiation showing up on their sensors, almost immediately figured out that it was from Chernobyl. Like, you can really be specific, and these things have a signature, is a way to put it.
President Biden was getting his latest vaccine publicly today, and he was asked about this. I want to play that 48 seconds for you, for folks, and we'll talk after.
The dirty bomb allegations from Russia as it relates to Ukraine, do you believe that this is the beginning of a false flag operation? Is Russia preparing to deploy a dirty bomb itself or a nuclear weapon?
I spent a lot of time today talking about that. Let me just say, Russia would be making an incredibly serious mistake if we're to use a tactical nuclear weapon. I'm not guaranteeing you that it's a false flag operation yet. We don't know. But it would be a serious, serious mistake.
All right, there he goes. He put his jacket on, and he just gotten vaccinated, and he's answering questions like that. What do you think of his response there?
I think what he's telling you is that actually, I should rephrase that. He's telling the Russians that we're paying a lot of attention. He's telling the Russians, don't kid yourselves if you think that you're going to get away with this one. And what he's basically saying to them is, when in doubt, we're going to kick your ass. And I think that the Russians need to hear that. I think it's, wars are fought on will at this point. And what Biden is doing is what you're supposed to do, which is to make sure that your opponent knows they're not going to pull one over on you, and you're not going to give up until they decide it's not worth it anymore to keep fighting.
All right, so that is, do we need to know anything else about, when I saw that, man, I was just like, geez, every time they forecast something that's going to be done to them, they then follow through and do it themselves. It would seem, and I'm just like, aren't they gonna do this?
Well, so Cheryl Rofer is on Twitter. It's Rofer. People should look her up. She is an ex-nuclear weapons scientist. And she put out a list yesterday of the 5 or 6 times that Putin and his people have threatened nuclear war or similar to dirty bomb since last February. So there's a lot of this. They do it a lot. They have been saying every 2 months or every month and a half they're going to do some radical, crazy thing, and they haven't carried those things out. And I think that is because when they get down to it, it doesn't solve their problem. Right? They nuke Kherson. I'm sorry, if they nuke Kiev, are the Ukrainians going to give it up? Absolutely not. And their strategic situation will get worse if they do that. Now, there's a delta in there somewhere, right? A tipping point potentially, where they get so desperate, they just decide, might as well, right? But I don't think that tipping point ever is likely to happen because Russia can literally just pull out and still be Russia. No one's invading Russia. Russia would rightfully nuke somebody who tried to attack Moscow with a conventional army, right? I mean, they are able to defend themselves no matter what, without question, from any reasonable attack. So it really gets down to it collapses down to Putin. And can Putin get away with ordering that to happen?
Right.
Will his people carry it out?
Right.
Will they decide it's not worth it for them? I think if you're Putin, is that a risk you really want to take? Or would you rather take the risk of backing up, making a deal, getting some of what you wanted and pulling out? That seems far more rational, if not reasonable, if that makes sense.
All right, let me move on to this letter from the Progressive House Democrats that has now since been retracted. What an absolute total misfire, self-inflicted wound. We can talk about the political repercussions. We can talk about how Russia and Putin sees this. We can talk about how the right in America sees this. The headline, Progressive House Democrats retracted a letter written 4 months ago, but released Monday for some reason, that urged Biden to directly negotiate with Putin to end the war in Ukraine. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal claimed the letter, which called on the Biden administration to, quote, seek a realistic framework for a ceasefire and to pursue every diplomatic avenue to support such a solution that is acceptable to the people of Ukraine, was, quote, released by staff without vetting. It was originally drafted and signed in June. Congress has committed more than $60 billion in security and humanitarian aid for Ukraine since Russia invaded in February. What are your thoughts on the 30 or so Progressive House Democrats that signed this letter and have since retracted it?
So my thoughts have evolved quite a bit in the last 24 hours. My initial reaction was, you clowns, you fools, how could you possibly have done this? But what's become clear, I think, in the last 24 hours is that this was a letter that was never meant to be sent. There is a lot of this on the Hill where people try to get a sense of an issue. They write a letter, they bring it around to their colleagues throw their 2 cents in, and you get this big document that's got everybody's position on it. And then if it's ever really going to go public, you all meet again, you circle back around, and you cut it down to something that is plausible and is reasonable and is clear, that you then put out to the media, right? Well, if you look at that letter contradicts itself in enormous ways multiple times. It says we have to get the Ukrainians to negotiate. It also says, no, we can't negotiate without the Ukrainians, right? It says the U.S. has to go alone. No, it's got to be the Europeans. It contradicts itself so much. What is really clear is that was a letter that nobody ever expected to go out. It was a working document that they had agreed to. And they'd only agreed to the working document. This, by the way, I don't think is a thing you're going to hear from virtually anybody. I haven't read this anywhere else. This is what I'm hearing talking to people. So you have a working document, which they had been working on up until June, July. And what happened in June and July? That's when we started to hear, particularly in July, and then get into August, that the Ukrainians were about to get the big stick out and start kicking rear end. A letter like that you think, hey, things aren't going well with the Ukrainians. Maybe if you distill that letter down, it basically says maybe we should talk to the Russians.
Yeah.
That seems more reasonable if you're looking at things in June and July when you think the Ukrainians have a pretty decent chance of losing outright.
Right.
Well, that letter says everything, basically, also. It literally has every position you could possibly imagine in it. That letter then gets put in a file sitting in Jayapal's office. Jayapal did not know that letter was going out. It went out under her name or under her auspices, but she did not know. That means that somebody went into a file in that office. Wait, let me get my hand in where you can see it, and went and pulled it out. Now, either the Quincy Institute, which is a Soros and Koch funded institute in D.C.
Yeah, Andrew Bacevich is president.
That's right, and they're realists. That's what they call themselves. They're both right and left. They have a reputation for considering themselves to be disruptors, which that term gives me hives completely. But the
fact that disruptors gives you hives gives me hives.
Right. The Quincy Institute probably helped work up the original statement. Maybe they already had a copy. But what we know is that statement came out of Jayapal's office. None of the congressmen who had signed it knew it was going out. And the Quincy Institute had a canned press release ready to go. So what this means is that somebody probably in Jayapal's office had a copy of it, and they coordinated with Quincy, or some variation of that scenario happened. And the purpose of it, honestly, is hard for me to parse. I don't understand what they thought they were going to accomplish, because the letter says everything to everybody. But the top line that they put in their press release was, we need to talk to the Russians because nuclear war might happen. So Quincy really directed the message of that letter away from many other messages you could have gotten out of it. The point that I'm getting at is that this was a bit of a conspiracy to try to get a certain viewpoint kicked out into the media. And conspiracy is a strong word. Nothing criminal happened here, but it's
few people working together to try to put pressure on politicians.
That's right. And what's amazing about it is that you have to wonder at the political judgment of the people who did that. In fact, you don't have to wonder about the political judgment of the people who did that. Their political judgment sucks. It was idiotic, because what they did by putting out a letter that was so incoherent, then by really crudely pushing one particular message from it, they basically made all of those people, all of those congressmen, Blumenauer put out a statement against it, Rankin did, DeFazio did, Jayapal did. Then they literally said, we're taking the entire thing back. So it's a really incredibly ham-handed, and Mearsheimer is in the Quincy Institute.
Is he?
These are yeah. And so this is sort of that classic, the realists who completely got Russia wrong, 100% wrong on the sort of middle to right. And then the sort of progressives on the left who kind of, they're the folks who are sort of why are we fighting there? What interests are we defending there? The U.S., these are the folks who say the U.S. needs to back out of its many commitments. They basically hurt their own argument, because they just proved that the people who want us to sort of go out there and negotiate more can't take a crap in a bucket if it to save their lives. I mean, they are inept and fools, frankly. And that kind of gets us to the sort of bigger picture of this. Say that we agree with the letter and we say, okay, fine, let's negotiate with Russia. We go to Russia and say, hey, laddie, let's make a deal.
Yeah.
And Putin says, okay, I want to keep every bit of territory I took. Yeah. Ukraine never goes into EU or UN. I'm sorry, to NATO. They can't have an army. And I get effectively a veto over Ukrainian national life. That's going to be his demands. And we say no. And Ukrainians say, you go fuck yourselves and die. And where are we after that? Back to square one, except that we are the assholes who went into a used car dealership and said, listen, Jimmy, I'm only going to pay you 110% for this car, right? It's these guys, I would not trust them to negotiate the lease on an apartment. They don't know what they're doing. And they don't know how, you you're going to negotiate with the Russians, guess how you negotiate with them? From a position of strength.
How do you think this is being seen and heard from the right wing in America to Russia to the West, NATO, et cetera? Like is this letter really doing anything permanently, or is it just other than destroy a day's news cycle and some credibility?
I think it destroyed the credibility. I think it destroyed the credibility of Quincy. I think it did. I think that if Jayapal can figure out and can prove that one of her staffers went around behind her back, and if Quincy actively helped out with that, Quincy will be absolutely dead for Democrats on the Hill forever. You don't do that to 30 Democrats 2 weeks before an election, right? And I really wonder at Quincy's motivation, the timing. Doing it 2 weeks before an election where you're very likely to get a House full, dominated by Republicans or led by Republicans, where there's already an issue of McCarthy's people trying to say we should cut money to Ukraine. I mean, I like Andrew Bacevich, but what in God's name are you thinking?
Well, we don't know what he's thinking.
Right,
yet.
You're helping out the Marjorie Taylor Greens of this world.
The Marjorie Taylor.
I mean, you should. Do that.
Speaking of which, I wanted to ask for your take on the midterm elections. Just 12 days away. Here is evening briefing, New York Times. Democrats bracing for a red wave. Wait a second. Just 2 weeks ago, it was a different story, Bill. Republicans are competing for House seats deep into blue territory, including New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, amid growing signs that voters are poised to punish President Biden's party. Needing just 5 seats to control the House, Republicans are spending millions of dollars to secure a bigger, more governable majority. In contrast, Democrats have devoted virtually no national money to targeting seats that Donald Trump carried in 2020, seizing on crime as a leading issue. Republicans have been deploying attack lines and imagery that have injected race into contests across the country, and the New York Times themselves getting raked for the way that they're framing this in terms of the quote injecting race part of it. We could talk about that, but what are your thoughts on 12 days away and polling? What are your thoughts about polling in general right now?
In a midterm year of a first-term president, all things being equal, typically the Republicans in this sort of environment, with inflation, gas prices, et cetera, you'd expect Democrats to lose 40, 45 seats. You'd expect them to lose probably 3 Senate seats. So when you see the New York Times suddenly go, oh my God, it's a red tsunami. Charlie Cook thinks Democrats lose 15 to 25 seats right now in the House, and maybe keep it even, maybe lose a Senate seat or 2 in the Senate. So unless you start seeing 40 seats, 45 seats go in the House and 3 seats in the Senate, it's not even back to normal, actually, right? It's a bad beat for the Republicans, even though, yes, it's going to be awful if they win the House and Senate, or either one. But in terms of the actual norms of American politics and the cycles that happen during midterms, if they win 15, 20 seats, it is not a red wave. It's not even close to a red wave. And I think that there's a big American media really just is all about sort of this, that there has to be a horse race and there has to be some big dramatic development. And every cycle we go through this. And I'll tell you, I talked to some folks who work in Republican politics, and we talk about polls all the time. And particularly a buddy of mine who's sort of in a world where he sees a lot of polling. He and I talk constantly back and forth. And you know what we've told each other? This morning we were texting each other. We don't know. We don't know. Because it's too hard to say. For instance, I'll give you a great example. Let's call this guy Jim. Jim was saying, if you look at the polling, it's definitely heading towards Republicans, for sure. Not a lot, but it's kind of shifting in their direction. And it was for about 2 weeks. And then in the last week, you start seeing CNN, CBS, CNN start shifting back a little bit. Also not a lot, a couple points. You start to see Carrie Lake suddenly looks like maybe she's maybe under a point or 2 to Hobbs in Arizona. Fetterman, you see these there's a great poll that Jim brought up that was awesome. It showed Fetterman and Oz with Fetterman leading by 1, but it had Fetterman winning independents by 17%. And Jim was saying to me, like, that's absurd. Like, there's no way that Fetterman wins independents in Pennsylvania by 17%.
Yeah.
and he only wins the race by 1 point. It's stupid. So the point being that everyone, and what this guy Jim said to me, he said, I talk to pollsters. And what happens when you sit them down and say, okay, explain your likely voter strain. Really explain it to me. Really, what do you think is happening? He said they really eventually admit that they just are taking a guess at this point. Polling has become very difficult in the world of cell phones. I think the answer rate is like less than 1/2%.
Right.
So it's just hard to know. I do think Democrats are in for a tough cycle. But I'm not sure it's going to be nearly as tough as, and you look at the, for instance, the polling kind of going against the Democrats, but the early voting numbers for Democrats across the United States are bonkers. They're superb. They're 2018 level.
Right.
And so they're indicators that go either way. I would think, given the economic, energy, inflation, global war kind of situation going on, it would be a bad year for Democrats. That would be the normal center of gravity of where things would go. I think that Dobbs is really going to affect things. I don't know how much. But one thing that people are noticing is lots and lots and lots of voters who have never voted before in their life are voting in this cycle as early voters. In Georgia, I want to say it's 180,000 people who have never voted before in their life are voting in this cycle, and they are skewing younger and browner definitively, and obviously women. So I don't think, and the guy that I know who literally pays for polls, so he gets to sit in the room and pick them apart. He's been in politics for 30 years. He told me, he's like, I don't believe much of anything right now because I really just don't think anyone has figured it out. So that's my unsatisfactory analysis. I think that we aren't going to know this one until, and by the way, we're not even going to know on election night or the day after, because a lot of places are going to be counting for a week. And Georgia is super unlikely for either one of them to hit 50%, which means we're almost certainly going to have another round in Georgia after that.
Right.
So, the answer to that is to everybody get off your ass and vote, because, this is an election where your individual vote probably matters a hell of a lot.
And bring plenty of friends.
Bring your friends. Vote early and vote often, as they say in New Jersey.
Did you watch any of the debates?
I never do.
Yeah.
I never do, because it doesn't really matter what I think. And I am very tuned up and uptight about politics, and I watch it a lot. And when you see people who really are into politics watching debates, they overread everything. What matters is how the media takes it tomorrow. And I'm not sure. I mean, I was reading updates about Oz and Fetterman. And, it was like Fetterman looks awful and Oz looks like a smarmy asshole. So, I think that's probably pretty fair. I don't think debates change very much very often. And I think in this case, in Pennsylvania in particular, Oz's biggest issue was that he had to fix, at least on some level, his likability. I think he's 20 points down as far as likability, and it doesn't sound like he's doing anything to fix that. Fetterman, I think the bar was set pretty low. So, Pennsylvania probably doesn't matter. And so, I would say, and I really would say, like, if you want to watch debates, good for you, but it's not, I'd much rather do things like this.
One more question for you. Last night, I got into it with my friend Corey Nathan. He actually got pretty upset with me, but I was reacting to a tweet of his, and I just want to get your reaction to it. He wrote, many folks I know can't even imagine voting for anyone from one political party or another. That just seems so close-minded, like a refusal to even think independently. What do you think of that kind of, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this. I think, well, actually, we've probably talked about it a lot of times, the old independent thinking thing. I mean, what do you think about what he said there?
Is the point that he just can't imagine voting for either party because they both suck?
I think he's saying that lots of us can't imagine voting for either party, I think. But
I mean, I'll be blunt. If you're the kind of person who can't imagine voting for either party, then you're kind of an asshole. Because particularly the Democratic Party is such an enormous tent that it would be difficult not to find a part of the Democratic Party that you couldn't fit in if you're slightly to the left of Attila the Hun, to be honest with you. We also are in a world where there is a potential thermonuclear war on the offing, where the United States government is the key state in maintaining world peace, however ineptly and often malignly it does it, and where we have the prospect of some sort of level of fascism in the United States. And if you're not willing to I don't know, bend your purity a little bit to vote for a party you don't love to keep fascists out of power in the United States.
I hear you, and I fully agree with that. But what about the reverse? That a Democrat that I personally have not found one Republican, ever in my life, I don't think, since I started paying attention to politics, that I could support more, as long as there was somebody else running against them. But more importantly, their policies. They're so far gone at this point. But I've been thinking about this tweet and this conversation on and off all day. And I guess I am prepared to say that I just don't think that Republicans have put forth a policy that helps working class or lower income folks for education opportunities, economic, healthcare, the foreign policy disasters. What policy? What is the policy that they put forward that was better than Democrats that helped folks out?
Well, my understanding of the tweet was that it was someone saying I couldn't vote for either one because they both.
Yeah, and I'm saying that I couldn't. So
you couldn't vote for a Democrat either.
No, I can vote for it. You're saying either one. Well, maybe I misunderstood. I thought he meant Democrats couldn't support Republicans and Republicans.
No. I mean that it's nuts to me that you can't, because typically the people that say this whole independent thing they tend to be disaffected Republicans, actually.
Yeah, that's what I've
usually
heard.
Who they
that's
are.
What I've read. Yeah, that's the data.
And there are people who would have been easily Republicans 20 years ago in New Jersey and been moderate and been fine. Those people are assholes because they are not Republicans because they realize how bad it is, right? They won't vote Republican because they know how bad it is, but they can't bring themselves to vote for Democrats because they typically have one or two policy things they have an emotional reaction to. And we are literally in an age where our decisions are about fascism or not. And we can debate the degree of the fascism that the Republican Party is stumbling into, but it's undebatable that they are headed towards an authoritarian, lawless political solution to American politics from their perspective. And if you can't vote against that, you're a moron. Let me put it this way. If I was in a state where Lynn Cheney was running against Donald Trump, I wouldn't think twice about voting for Lynn Cheney. Right. I wouldn't think twice about voting for Joe Walsh. I wouldn't think twice about, you vote tactically. And if you were too immature to vote tactically, then you're going to soon live in a place where you don't have any vote at all.
Let me ask you one more thing, which is about Kanye West and the fact that yesterday Adidas finally dropped him, which is ironic because they're a German company. And he made the remarks that he made about Jews. The Gap has dropped him. Creative Artists Agency, his agency, has dropped him. Vogue, Film and Television Studio, MRC, won't distribute a recently completed documentary. And then this other fashion company, Balenciaga. So
I should point out also, I threw out all my Yeezys. My sneakers.
You did? Yeah, I'm surprised you had so many.
Tough moment.
I'm surprised. It must have been hard for you.
But I needed to do it. It was the moral thing to do.
You should have. The moral thing to do is to sell them and then give money to the ADL. But how about this? There's still I think that it's easy to become cynical and say that people get away with anything these days, especially powerful people, influential people. He's not getting away with the remarks that he made. They've done a lot of damage to our dialogue, to our culture, I think to the relations with, I'm not going to say it did a lot of damage to relationships between black folks and Jewish folks. And there's been a lot of people standing up talking about that long-standing relationship and so on. But you could imagine that it does deteriorate. It doesn't help that kind of historic issue. And it's ugly. But the point is, the guy's getting dropped everywhere. He's not getting canceled. He's getting fired and dropped from everything. Sure. And I think that's good.
I think it is good, but I think it's kind of nuts that it took going that far. He didn't go from a reasonable, normal person saying normal shit to being a blunt anti-Semite, basically saying Adidas has a Nazi history, so they can't fire me, right? That's what he basically said the other day. He was saying terrible things about people and about, black people and, wearing, what was it, the White Lives Matter shirt.
400 years of slavery was a choice at one point.
That's right. I mean, he has been an absolute jackass, as Obama put it, and a toxic, nasty personality for a really long time. I mean, people already forget that he basically threatened his ex-wife, Kim Kardashian. And really, I am no fan of Kim Kardashian, but Kim Kardashian was in a difficult situation to protect herself from that idiot and his many, many followers out there in the world. And I think it's insane that he didn't get crushed for that. I mean, this has been a bad guy. And yes, he finally found a line that you are not allowed to cross, but he basically had to stumble practically into full Nazism to find that one.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's nobody should be patting themselves on the back for that. It's absolutely shameful it took so long to get that jackass out of public life.
Well said. We'll see what happens. I mean, he'll have some kind of rehabilitation tour, I'm sure. I'm sure. I wonder what corporate partner he could find at this point.
Well,
it just seems like he's too.
Adidas clearly dragged their feet, no pun intended, on getting rid of him. And Adidas were making shoes for the Wehrmacht in World War II using slave labor. So they have a history.
Their history is.
All right, but they were really dragging their feet until they really got pushed into getting rid of him. Right. We live in a world where these sort of tech bro and sort of popular entertainment guys who have the maturity of a 9-year-old and the moral sense of a Hitler Youth are allowed to have all this power and money, and it lets them get away with things. And it's fucking crazy to me. It's crazy. I believe for folks like that, I'm 100% in favor of cancel culture.
Well, it's but it's not even I hate that word. It's you get fired. Sometimes you get fired. Your partnership is ended. You're fired. You can't do that here at this job. You're fired.
Right.
By
the way, Pete, just to point out, I own a parking garage company, right? Not exactly the place where HR is a powerful, force in the parking business. Right. If one of my guys muttered to me in an aside, the Jews control the world and yada, 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 I would say, shirt, name tag, get the fuck out of my business right now.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even, and, two of my partners are very conservative guys. They would immediately get the fuck out of our business right now.
You'd have them turn their name tags in. That's pretty harsh.
The name tag goes first. Yeah, you don't want them going out there in the world,
really
associated with you. But the point being that my company's not small, but relative to the world, it's tiny.
Yeah,
and we wouldn't put up with that for a second, not for a second. And so I don't understand why the Elon Musks, the Teals, the Kanye, fuck him, I'm going to call him Kanye, why these guys are able to get away with this. It's crazy.
What about your Jewish parking attendant that refuses to park German cars? Why do you allow for that still?
I got to tell you, my father was in Germany from 45 to 48, and he bought his first German car, I think, in 1969.
He held out for a long time.
He held out, and he did not buy a Japanese car until the 80s.
A lot of people of that generation for sure couldn't make sense of it.
He was still pissed. He was still pissed.
As one more thing I did want to ask you. So the UK has their 93rd prime minister in 6 weeks.
Yes.
And he's the son of Indian immigrants. He's brown. He's the first British Asian prime minister.
Yep.
And then in the UK, they're their first female prime minister. And this is, I tweeted. So
Second.
Of course, there's what?
Second, unless you think that Thatcher was not a woman, which is...
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sure there's a school of thought on that.
I think I might have messed up. Italy has their first female prime minister.
Gabish.
So my point was, tell me if there's anything wrong with that. Maybe there's more nuance needed. But if the first female prime minister of Italy supports ideas that aren't good for women, I'm just not celebrating this because it's just men using a woman to perpetuate patriarchy. And the same goes for the first prime minister of color in the UK. I can't really get too excited about it as if his actual ideas make life for people of color more difficult, better rather than easier. And what do you think? Right. Should I have a little more nuance? Should I be a little bit less judgmental?
No, I mean, Hitler was the first Bavarian chancellor of Germany. Yay!
Oh, you went right to Hitler.
Right? Hitler was the first Bavarian chancellor of Germany. Who cares? Like, what these people are going to do in their policies is what matters. It's funny coming from a guy who's pretty much on the left. That identity shit carries nothing to me. I don't care, because if you have a Southwest Indian Prime Minister of England, which, by the way, fascinating, and Ireland is about to have a Taoiseach, a president, who's also half Irish and half Southwest Asian. I think that's fascinating from a historical perspective, that the British Isles are now going to be run by people from the Indian subcontinent. So there's a historical irony there for sure. In Britain's case, what's amazing about it is that he's going to run it like he is running a Victorian orphanage in a Dickens novel, right? I mean, so it's like a double whammy. I mean, I don't give a shit that Maloney's a woman. I mean, she's at minimum fascist adjacent, if not actually fascist. So that matters a little more to me than her biological plummet.
I like that answer. I like it a lot. All right, I'll let you go. I appreciate you joining me tonight as always. Thank you very, very much, sir.
Excellent.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there he goes at Bill B in D.C. Go say hello to him on Twitter. Always a pleasure to have him joining me here on the show. That was awesome. As always, I always learn a lot. I love his take on things, and so many of you do as well. So cool. And at Bill B in D.C. Go follow him right now. All right, well, very, very excited to welcome Karla Hernandez to the show for the first time. She is currently the president of the United Teachers of Dade, which is the largest teachers union in southeastern United States. She has accomplished a great deal to help teachers and students in Miami-Dade County public schools for years now. She's born and raised in Miami. She's first-generation American of Honduran descent, the first Hispanic officer to be elected at United Teachers of Dade. She holds a bachelor's degree from Florida International University in emotionally handicapped education and a master's degree in business management from St. Thomas University. Dedicated her life and career to advocating for public education. She's taught for more than 10 years in the classroom. She was selected as Teacher of the Year for her outstanding work with special needs children. She's a happily married mother of 2, and in addition to her advocacy and social justice work with the United Teachers of Dade, she's an active member of her church, where she volunteers her time for humanitarian efforts overseas. She's one of the most impressive people I've ever met. She's a true born leader, one of the most inspiring, cool, tough, funny, thoughtful, passionate, compassionate people I've met, and I'm so excited to have her on the show, and I really hope that she wins with Charlie Crist and becomes lieutenant governor. Would that not be the most amazing thing? You're going to love her just as much as I do. Ladies and gentlemen, Karla Hernandez Mats, for the first time ever, on Twitter, by the way, at Karla for Florida. Go check it out. Follow her. Let her know that you heard this conversation. That'd mean a lot to me, and I hope to talk to her again no matter what happens. Here we go. Oh my gosh, there she is. I've just told you everything about her, and I can't even believe, Karla, that you are running with Charlie Crist. Congratulations.
Thank you, my friend. It's awesome to be here, and of course, talk about all these exciting things that are happening in the state of Florida. You've been so good to me. You've always encouraged me throughout the years to keep on fighting the good fight and connecting with community. And, this is not just an American dream, but an American reality that we're going to be able to do this now.
I sure hope so. There's so much at stake. And I know we all know this is going to be a close election. So right here at the beginning, what do you think is the most important message if you only had a short amount of time, which is, what you're allotted in this day and age with media and just with politics in general? What's most important for Florida voters, and what can, maybe those of us that are not in Florida listening, tell our Florida friends?
Well, I would say, number one, that early voting has started. It started today. We need to make sure that we get 5-10 of our friends to come out. Make sure that abuela, your uncles and aunts, your neighbors, everybody knows what the issues are and that they come out and vote. We got to vote as a block and vote for important things that matter to us. So vote early. Don't wait till November the 8th. Vote early. It's been expanded for a reason. We want to provide more opportunities for community to come out and vote. And then number two, I'd say that, watch the debate. I'm sure that we're going to see the Ron DeSantis that we all know, someone who's an extremist, someone who has a lot of MAGA-like mannerisms. We're going to see him emulating Trump. We'll see him disrupt and pivot and not answer the questions. And that's what we've been seeing for the past 4 years. So, be engaged, be informed, and go out and vote.
Will he be wearing those white boots? This is a big question. A lot of people.
I think he will.
Yeah.
I think he will.
He knows that word.
I think it's like a staple outfit of choice for him. It makes him feel comfortable.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's okay. Listen, we're all about whatever makes people feel comfortable. Right, so we welcome.
See, there's that thoughtfulness, even for Ron DeSantis, that I know about you. And that's the thing that burns me up, Karla, because I know you personally and I know what you've done with your life and your career. I mean, you literally have a degree in working with emotionally handicapped children. You are a Christian who walks the walk and actually go to other countries to work on their humanitarian efforts. And what I'm trying to say is you are one of the most thoughtful, empathic, and also, of course, brilliant and very strong human beings I know. And Ron DeSantis and so many of these Republicans are the opposite. They're so mean and cruel, and they're certainly not passing government policy that's going to help most of us, much less the least amongst us. And it burns me up because you're so good and he's so bad. And I don't like to put it that way. But how do you feel about that? How do you look at that?
Boom. I mean, that's just it. I think that, people are really tired. He has led by being a divisive governor. I mean, he's dividing, he's fear mongering, he's anti-LGBTQ, he's anti-immigrants, he's anti-women. He's got all this radical agenda policy. And here, Charlie Crist and I are just, two really good-hearted, normal people that want our communities to thrive and survive and be great. And so we're trying to unify our state. We're trying to talk about issues that people really care about. There's an affordability crisis happening in Florida. It's one of the most expensive states in the country, if not the most expensive. Our, insurance here has increased by 3 times the national average. So think about that. And of course, we care about women and making sure that they feel respected, that they have the dignity to make decisions about their own bodies in the intimacy of their families, period. There's just so much at stake. I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. So of course, I'm going to be about the inclusivity, about making sure that we support people and meet them where they are. But think about this. He's banning books. Yeah. He's censoring teachers. We're 48th in the country in how we pay our educators. Of course, we have 9,000 vacancies in this state because it's a self-inflicted wound that he created. And that's what he's doing. He's wounding our communities. He's wounding people. He's not about Florida. He's actually politicking, all around the country, trying to make sure that people see him because he wants to be the next president. And we can't do that. So y'all, when we save Florida, we're going to be saving the country. When our Floridians go out and vote, we're going to be doing everybody in the country a favor by saving everybody. You're
so good at this. I like when I met you and when I see you speak and when I talk to you and now when I'm talking to you, I'm like, she's so likable. She's so great and smart and thoughtful. You're such a great choice for Charlie Crist and for whatever you do next. But what was it that brought you to this? Like, who were you as a little girl that decided, I want to be a teacher and then a leader of teachers and now a leader of people in my state? Like, what is it? What is it about you? What is your special sauce? Who did this?
So I have a very humble beginning, and I think it's part of like the American dream and that, things can happen. And, if you just pour into children and you give them the resources and anything is possible. Look, my dad came to this country from Honduras. He was a farm worker. He cut sugarcane. He picked tomatoes. Then he became a skilled laborer and a carpenter. He joined his union and he taught me all the importance of the labor movement of middle class. He said in Spanish, of course, Mija, darling, you make sure that people don't treat you as a second-class citizen. You fight for people's rights. You elevate community. When one person is struggling, you make sure that you help them in their struggle. And then my grandmother, who helped to raise me, we lived in a very small house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 5 of us. A lot of sharing, Pete. A lot of sharing.
My Lord.
Yes. So I shared my room and my bed with my grandmother. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. She was 99 years old. But when I was in high school, I learned that she was illiterate. She had not been given the opportunity to learn to read or write because she was born in 1920 in Honduras, a country that didn't value or see women with, equity, equality. So she didn't go to school because they didn't think it was important for them, for women to have access to a full education. And she was 9 years old when she started working in somebody's kitchen. And so, I grew up and I said, okay, my parents have taught me all these things: give back, serve others, fight for people, make sure that we live in a better community, leave this world in a better way than you found it. I said, I'm going to become a teacher and I want to inspire little girls like my abuelita Elia. I want to inspire little boys. Doesn't matter your race, your nationality, your zip code. Like if we pour love and resources into kids, then we can make the world better and we can break cycles of anything. Right. And so that was it. And I felt like I had found my jam. I was in my space. My kids are in our schools, in our public schools. I'm the leader of the teachers union now. Everything merged, right? Labor, education, fighting for people and community. And, I was just in it, just in the rhythm. I bumped into you into so many different places and you were like, Karla, there's something about you. You should really think about doing something else. And I was like, I am doing something else. I'm the president of the 4th largest teachers union in the country, and we're making a difference. And Charlie said, you know what, Karla? I want a woman. I want a mom. I want an educator. I want somebody that fights for the working class and labor. And you represent that. You've been in Tallahassee. You've been lobbying. You talk to Republicans and Democrats about the issues that our communities face. I've been part of so many different movements in our, local community, but across the country as well. And honestly, I was just honored. I was thrilled, to even be considered. And I thought it was kind of like just a thing, like, oh, he's going to put me on some list. But no, it turned out to be real. Here I am.
It's amazing. He sees what I saw, what anybody who sees in you sees, which is, oh, this woman is so smart and excellent at what she's doing. I'd like to see her do this. Meanwhile, you're like, I'm doing it, man. I've been doing it. I've been making a difference in people's lives. It sounds like your entire life as a result of a lot of people making a huge difference in your life. It sounds like you had awesome role models in your family. I'm sure teachers as well. Tell me about the children, Karla, because you have been working with kids forever. Why would you? It sounds super challenging to me, the idea of working with, as we called it, special ed or emotionally handicapped children. You literally studied it and work with these kids by choice, which means I'm sure that you enjoy it. What is that work? Tell me a story about the kids and why you do it.
What's interesting about that particular career and specialty that I picked. When I was doing humanitarian work overseas, I was going to Honduras and visiting a lot of orphanages. And that's the first time that I had my eyes wide open to the fact that within our educational communities, we have vulnerable communities that sometimes don't get access to all the resources that they need. So I started to do research about it. And here in the United States, even though we have IDEA and we have laws and, we encourage parents to get IEPs and do all these things, we know that a lot of times our teachers don't have the resources that they need, to service our most vulnerable populations or our students with exceptional needs. And so I said, that's what I want to do. I want to advocate for parents. I want to advocate for, for children. I don't have anyone in my family with a special need, but I have a heart for people that are vulnerable. And of course that, we can help along the way. And so that was my specialty. I've been doing it now for 19 years, believe it or not. I've been a teacher for 19 years. And along that time, I've met so many incredible people and so many different journeys and paths of people fighting for things, for gun reform, because, we need safety in our communities, fighting for women's rights, fighting for, children that are DACA mentored or seeking, to have status here in this country because they're giving back. Or some of them are even teachers, believe it or not, teachers that want to be not just DACA mentored, but want to have access to living in this country permanently. And they're already serving our communities. How concerned are you about voting and people having access and there not being obstacles in the way of Florida voters now that early voting's open, which is great, but all the way up to Election Day? I mean, we saw these horrific
these arrests that Ron DeSantis goons he sent to arrest people, former felons who thought they could vote legally. I know a judge threw that out, which is great. But how concerned and what are the issues around actual access to the ballot for this election?
Look, I think that that's an extremely important point, Pete. And your listeners, your viewers, they're so in tune and they get this stuff. Look, we're seeing a person that acts like a wannabe dictator. Yeah. Like everything that we know about authoritarian regimes is what he's exhibiting. He arrested these people right before the primaries because he's trying to suppress the vote, right? We saw what he did. He gerrymandered two
because he's scaring people. He's trying to suppress the vote by scaring people into not voting because you're going to get arrested if you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so that's the narrative that he wants out there. He wants communities to be scared. He wants communities to doubt if they have access, that they should go because they're going to get in trouble. He gerrymandered two African-American congressional districts out of their voting blocks, right? This is what he did because he's scared of minorities. He's scared of Black and brown communities. He's anti-woman. There's not even exceptions for rape or incest. There's two little girls that are middle schoolers that are victims of incest. Right now in Florida, they had to travel 2 to 3 states out of here away because they did not have access to reproductive health care. What kind of state does that? He bans books. Florida is number 2 in the country for the most banned books. He censors teachers. He wants us to rewrite history. He's so unpatriotic. He's so ashamed of his country that he doesn't want us to teach the truth. And we believe in teaching the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because we're truth tellers and we want to teach with authenticity. So we want to make sure that everybody, our community, our kids, they know what has happened in the past so that we're better for it. We make the changes that are necessary and we have a better future. And so, all these things that we're seeing, he's restricting women's rights. He's arresting people. He removed 4 school board members from Broward County. These are duly elected board members. Again, this is what dictators do. He removed Attorney General out of Hillsborough. I mean, he is just out there doing whatever he wants to. We're going to hold him accountable. I hope that, that people that are able to watch the debate see how he pivots, how he doesn't answer the questions, how he avoids, talking about these things, because we are going to hold him accountable for all his radical anti-everything agenda. Anti-women, anti-freedoms, anti-people of Florida. But it's pretty awful what we're seeing. But I have hope, Pete. I really believe that when people see us, not only do they get energized, but people are tired of, the politics and the division. They want unifiers. And that's what Charlie Crist and I are doing. We're unifying the state. We're advocating for people. We want to make it better. So the plan is get out and vote. Make sure that your voice is heard. And
I'll have all the information for early voting, where to vote, and the show notes for this, as well as in all social media for this. We'll use it for that. Last question, Karla, and I'm so excited to talk to you and that you are on this ticket. But the top of the ticket is Charlie Crist. You mentioned the debate tonight. You've gotten to know him. What do you want to say about hopefully the future governor of Florida?
Listen, Charlie Crist is amazing. First of all, he's already been the governor. He's been a congressman. He's been commissioner of education. He's checked all these boxes. He knows how to do this. He's going to do it, from day one. The impressive part about him is really his heart and how committed he is to community and to people. Again, he could have picked somebody with a lot more, maybe political experience, right? I do have experience, but my experience is very different. But that's the experience he wanted. He wanted a mom. He wanted a union leader. He wanted somebody that fights for public education and children. He wanted to bring community to the table. He thought it not robbery that the child of 2 immigrants could not only dream big dreams, but have an American reality. And that's what this country's about. That's what this state is about. We are one of the most diverse states in the entire country. There's a lot on the ballot. There's a lot on the ticket. And Charlie Crist is a huge part of how we make Florida better, because we know that right now our state is very divided. We have a Republican-led state legislature through the Senate and the House. And so the only balance that we're going to bring to the state is going to be by having a Democratic governor, and that's Charlie Crist. So that's why it's so important That's why we need to get him in office. And my job is going to be to make sure that any promise that we make along the trail, that we keep it, that we stay in community, that we keep on hearing our folks and their needs, and that I work, again, like I've always been doing as a leader, in Miami through the union with educators, working across the aisle, making sure that the things that we need, that our community needs, are the things that we're actually moving in the state of Florida.
I've worked around a lot of really impressive leaders my entire life and career, and you always come up in my mind as someone who really does it right. You are a person who motivates people. I don't know. I can't see you failing at anything, and I'm always very excited to see what you're going to do next, but I'm most excited to see what you're doing today. Thank you for joining me. I am so excited to see you guys win, and I'll do whatever it takes to help you at this point, Karla. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. Love you, man. You're the best.
Good luck.
I'll catch you on your next one.
All right, there she goes, everybody. What did you think? Karla for Florida. Karla with a K. Karla Hernandez, everybody. Teacher, wife, mother, Latina, God-fearing activist, president of the United Teachers of Dade, nominee for Lieutenant Governor of Florida, CharlieCrist.com. Go check it out. Everybody in Florida, go support this amazing. You'd be so lucky to have her as your lieutenant governor. Oh my gosh, anybody would be. Love Karla and hope to talk to her again really soon. Go follow her and support her on Twitter. Let her know you heard her here on Stand Up. Thanks again to Bill Boyle, and go to Indeed.com/standup if you need to hire somebody for your company or firm. And that's it. That's all I've got for you. Very excited to welcome you right back in here to the show tomorrow. Tell your friends about it. Give me a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, wherever you are listening. Sign up for a paid subscription because the show's free, but it costs me a lot of money and time every day. I work really hard on it, and I can't do it without your paid subscription for as little as $5 or more. You can always subscribe for more, as Paul Sagar did. Hey, Paul, you're the best. Thank you very much. And I will talk to you tomorrow. John Carroll, take us out, will you? Love you guys. Be the change you want to see in the world. Bye-bye.
The devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, to make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.